When the notification popped up on my phone, I already knew what it was before opening it. Hey, my birthday's coming up, can't wait to see you. Every year, the same cheerful message from my childhood best friend, Sophie, and every year, the same sinking feeling in my stomach. It wasn't that I didn't love her. I did. Sophie and I grew up together, the kind of inseparable kids who spent summers drawing on sidewalks and making friendship bracelets that turned our wrists green. But that was 10 years ago. Life had quietly pulled us apart. She stayed in our hometown, surrounded by her loud, warm social circle. I moved to the city for college and never really came back except for her birthday. Her friends were nice enough. At least most of them were. The exception, as always, was Amanda. Amanda had been part of Sophie's friend group for as long as I could remember, though I didn't know her well. What I did know was that, for reasons I couldn't quite understand, she seemed to have made it her personal mission to comment on my body every single year. God, you're so skinny. Do you even eat? Your legs are like sticks. At first, I laughed it off. I've always been thin. Not model thin, just naturally petite. The kind of body that makes people think you must survive on air and coffee. The truth is, I eat a lot. I just happen to have a metabolism that burns everything like wildfire. But Amanda's tone wasn't playful. It had that sharp edge, the kind that cuts a little deeper each time. The first few parties, I brushed it off as insecurity, or maybe an awkward attempt at humor. But after a decade of hearing the same jabs, I started dreading the entire event. Each year, I'd rehearse little mental pep talks in the mirror. She can't get to you this time. Just smile. Be polite. You're an adult. Still, it never worked. Her words always found their mark. Last year, I remember standing by the snack table, nibbling on pretzels just to prove a point, when Amanda walked over and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Wow, I can actually see your collarbone from here. Do you even have any fat on your body?" Everyone laughed. I wanted to disappear. So this year, when Sophie's text came through, I seriously considered not going. I had every excuse ready. Work, a cold, an imaginary migraine. But when I mentioned it to my mom, she tilted her head and said, "Why would you let someone like that ruin something you used to love?" I sighed, because she makes me feel awful every time I go. Mom pursed her lips in thought. Then don't give her that power. Next time she says something rude, pretend she's giving you a compliment. Say thank you, smile, and move on. If she's trying to insult you, your confidence will throw her off completely. It actually sounded kind of brilliant. A small, harmless way to diffuse the tension and maybe even expose her nastiness for what it was. Okay, I said. If she says, "You're so skinny," I'll just smile and say, "Thanks. I love being skinny." Mom grinned. Exactly. Kill her with kindness. I didn't tell my mom that Amanda was plus size. I didn't think it mattered since I wasn't planning to insult her. I was only talking about myself. It wasn't like I was calling her fat. I was simply choosing not to feel ashamed for my own body anymore. The day of the party came faster than I expected. I spent too long choosing an outfit that didn't cling too tightly, didn't show too much collarbone, didn't look like I was trying. In the mirror, I looked fine. A simple dress, light makeup, hair down. Harmless. The 2-hour drive gave me plenty of time to think, mostly about what I'd say, how I'd stay calm, and how I'd finally stop letting Amanda ruin this one day every year. When I arrived, Sophie greeted me with the same warmth she always had. She hugged me like no time had passed at all, and for a moment I felt at ease. But then I saw Amanda across the room. She was watching me, her eyes flicking from my face to my arms, her mouth twitching in that familiar smirk, and just like that, all my resolve began to crumble. Still, I smiled. I told myself, not this year. This year, I'd be ready. What I didn't know then was that one sentence, 7 harmless words, would change everything. Sophie's parties had always been chaotic in a familiar way, laughter spilling through the house, people shouting over music, the faint smell of cake and cheap champagne hanging in the air. For everyone else, it was just another Saturday night. For me, it was an endurance test. Still, I tried. I smiled at people I barely remembered, accepted a drink I didn't really want, and laughed at stories I'd already heard 3 times before. For the first hour, things went surprisingly well. Amanda was there, of course, sitting on the couch with her phone in one hand and a slice of pizza in the other, but she hadn't said anything yet. I was starting to think maybe this year would be different. Then, while Sophie was introducing me to one of her coworkers, I felt Amanda's eyes on me. It was that same slow, evaluative look she always gave, as if she were sizing me up for flaws. I tried to ignore it, focusing instead on Sophie's bubbly chatter. "Do you still run?" she asked, suddenly. "You were always such a fast one in gym class." Before I could answer, Amanda's voice cut in. "Of course she does. How else would she stay that tiny?" I froze. Sophie gave a quick, nervous laugh. "Amanda..." "What?" Amanda said, shrugging. "It's a compliment she's like model thin," I'm just saying. I forced a small smile, the kind you put on when you're pretending not to be offended. It's fine, I said softly. Though it wasn't, Amanda smirked and took a sip of her drink, as if she'd won some invisible round in a game only she was playing. After that, I kept my distance. I helped Sophie set up the dessert table, refilled cups, talked to anyone who wasn't Amanda. But as the night wore on, I noticed her drifting closer, joining conversations I was in, lingering nearby whenever I laughed. By the time the cake came out, I could feel the tension tightening in my shoulders like a rubber band about to snap. When everyone gathered in the living room for games, Sophie insisted I sit next to her. Unfortunately, that meant Amanda was directly across from me. Okay, Sophie said cheerfully. Truth or dare time? Someone dared a guy to chug a mystery drink that turned out to be a horrific mix of beer and orange juice. Everyone roared with laughter. The next few rounds were harmless. Silly confessions, minor dares. I was starting to relax again. Then someone said, Amanda, truth or dare? She grinned. Truth. The girl who asked her smirked. Do you think anyone here is secretly jealous of you? Amanda's eyes flicked immediately to me. She said slowly. I think some people probably wish they had curves like mine, but that's okay. Not everyone can pull it off. A few awkward chuckles rippled through the group. My stomach twisted, but I stayed quiet. Mom's voice echoed in my head. Pretend it's a compliment. I took a slow breath. If she said anything else, I'd be ready. A few minutes later, as people got up for more snacks, Amanda stood and stretched dramatically. Then she turned to me and laughed, under her breath. God, you're so skinny. I don't know how you don't just blow away in the wind. That was it. The moment I'd been waiting for, I turned to her, smiled, and said lightly, Thanks. I love being skinny. The words slipped out as easily as breathing. I didn't say them with malice. If anything, my tone was almost cheerful. It was exactly what Mom had suggested. Confident, simple, self-assured. But the effect was instant and explosive. Amanda's face froze. For a second, I thought she was about to laugh it off. Then her expression twisted. Confusion, then anger, then something I couldn't quite name. Before I could even blink, she lifted her hand and slapped me across the face. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Everything stopped. Conversations, music, laughter, gone. I felt the sting bloom across my cheek, hot and shocking. My eyes watered as I stared at her, too stunned to speak. Amanda's face crumpled, her eyes filled with tears. You're awful, she choked out, and then she turned and ran from the room, sobbing. No one moved. Finally, Sophie rushed to my side. Oh my God, are you okay? I could only nod, though my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. Around us, whispers started, soft, judgmental murmurs that pricked at my skin. I caught fragments. She shouldn't have said that. And poor Amanda. Poor Amanda. I pressed a trembling hand to my cheek and realized I was shaking. I muttered something about needing air and walked out the front door before anyone could stop me. The night air was cold and sharp. My car was parked 2 blocks away, but I didn't care. I just started walking. I'd done exactly what Mom said. I hadn't insulted anyone. I'd only defended myself. So why did everyone look at me like I was the villain? The drive home felt longer than usual, the kind of endless, silent stretch of highway where your thoughts start looping like a broken record. The slap still burned faintly on my cheek, though by then it wasn't just the sting that hurt. It was the humiliation. Every few miles, I'd replay the moment in my head, the shocked faces, the heavy silence, Amanda crying, and me, standing there, hand to my face, trying not to cry myself. I must have whispered, "What just happened?" 100 times before I reached my apartment. By the time I walked through the door, it was past midnight. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I just sat on the couch staring into the dark, the rhythm of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. It wasn't supposed to go that way. Mom's advice had seemed foolproof, kind even, but instead I'd become the villain of the story. When I finally crawled into bed, I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed every so often with new notifications. Messages from people who'd been at the party, a few from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't read them. I couldn't. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight and a dull ache behind my eyes. For a few seconds, I forgot everything that had happened. Then I saw the faint redness on my cheek in the mirror, and it all came rushing back. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. Finally, I opened a message from Sophie. Are you okay? I stared at the screen for a while before replying. Yeah, just surprised, I guess. She replied almost instantly. I talked to Amanda this morning. She's really upset. She slapped me. Sophie. I know. That wasn't right. She knows that too. She's embarrassed. I read that message 3 times, trying to process it. Then why does it sound like I'm the one being blamed? There was a long pause before she replied. Because what you said hurt her feelings. My stomach dropped. I didn't insult her. I was just responding to her comment about me. I get that, but you saying I love being skinny, it's kind of insensitive, don't you think? Especially to someone who struggles with her weight. I put the phone down and rubbed my forehead. My pulse was rising again, frustration bubbling up, insensitive. I thought about the years of comments Amanda had thrown my way. The digs, the mockery, the way she'd made me dread every birthday she's been making comments about my body for years. I never said a word back. I finally stand up for myself, and now I'm the bad guy? It's just, being thin isn't something people are usually shamed for. You know, it's not the same. I stared at that message for a long time. The logic felt twisted, but I could also see the shape of what she was trying to say. Still, it didn't make it fair. Maybe it's not the same, but it still hurts. I'm tired of pretending it doesn't. I know. I just wish it hadn't happened at my party. That was the end of the conversation. She didn't say she was angry, but she didn't really take my side, either. For the rest of the day, I wandered around my apartment in a fog. I tried to do normal things. Laundry, dishes, scrolling through social media. But my mind kept circling back to the same thought. How did I end up the one who needed to apologize? That evening, I called my mom. She answered on the second ring. Honey, how'd it go? I hesitated. Amanda slapped me. There was a stunned silence. She what? Right in front of everyone. Oh my God. Are you okay? I think so. Physically, at least. Emotionally. I don't know. I told her everything. The comment, my reply, the slap, the crying, the judgment. When I finished, Mom sighed heavily. You did nothing wrong, sweetheart. You were polite. You didn't insult her. If she took offense, that's on her, not you. I know, but everyone acted like I was the one who went too far. That's because people get uncomfortable when confidence comes from someone they can't criticize, she said firmly. You've always been thin, and people assume that means you can't be insecure. But you're human. You have feelings. What she did was cruel. Her words comforted me, but only a little. Because, deep down, I wasn't sure if it mattered who was right anymore. The damage was done. I hadn't heard from Amanda since. I wasn't sure I wanted to, but I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow this wasn't over. Somewhere in the quiet between one heartbeat and the next, I realized this wasn't just about me and Amanda. It was about all the unspoken rules of what you're allowed to say and who's allowed to feel hurt. And I was starting to see that breaking those rules, even unintentionally, came with a price. The following week felt like living under a microscope. At first, I thought maybe the whole thing would blow over. One awkward night that people would quietly forget. But of course, nothing stays private in a friend group as tight as Sophie's. By Monday morning, the story had spread. It started with a vague Instagram story from one of the girls at the party. A blurry photo of a drink and the caption, "Some people really don't know when to shut up." Then came the group chat screenshots, the whispers, the sudden silences. When my name came up, Sophie called me 2 days later. I just wanted to let you know people are talking, she said gently, as if I hadn't already noticed. What are they saying? I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. That you kind of body-shamed Amanda. I laughed in disbelief. By saying I love my body? That's body-shaming now? I'm not agreeing with them, she said quickly. But you know how people can be. Amanda told everyone you said it with attitude. I rubbed my temples. Of course she did. Sophie hesitated. She's been really emotional. I think she feels like you were trying to make her feel bad about herself. She's been making me feel bad about myself for years, I snapped, then immediately regretted the edge in my voice. Sophie sighed. I know, I just wish this hadn't turned into a thing. But it had. It definitely had. The next few days were a blur of tension and quiet judgment. A couple of mutual friends unfollowed me on social media. One girl sent me a DM that just said, "You didn't have to say that. She's been struggling." I typed and deleted my reply 3 times before finally settling on, I didn't mean to hurt anyone. It didn't matter. People had already chosen their narrative, and I wasn't the sympathetic one in it. I tried explaining to my coworkers what had happened, hoping for some validation. One of them, a sweet but blunt woman named Erica, frowned and said, "Honestly, I kind of get it. When you're thin, people assume you can take those jokes. If a bigger person made fun of herself, no one would bat an eye. But when a thin person says they like being thin, people see it as rubbing it in. So confidence is only allowed if it doesn't make anyone uncomfortable?" I asked. She shrugged. Pretty much. It was meant as a joke, but it didn't feel funny. For the first time, I started questioning everything. Not just what I'd said, but whether my body had somehow become an open invitation for people's opinions. I'd spent years quietly absorbing comments, pretending they didn't sting. And the one time I pushed back, politely, even, it turned into a scandal. That Friday, Sophie texted again. Amanda's still upset. She said she doesn't want to see you for a while. That's fine. I wasn't planning to. I just wish you two could talk it out. There's nothing to talk about. She insulted me, I responded. She hit me. I'm not sure what part of that needs a conversation. She didn't respond. Later that night, I scrolled through Amanda's social media. I knew I shouldn't, but curiosity won. Her latest post was a long caption under a mirror selfie, something about toxic people hiding cruelty behind fake smiles. The comments were full of supportive messages. You're beautiful. Don't let anyone tear you down. You deserve better friends. Skinny girls can be so mean. I closed the app, feeling sick. I wasn't angry anymore. At least not in the same way. It was something heavier now, something closer to sadness. Because despite everything, I hadn't wanted to hurt her. I hadn't wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted for once not to feel humiliated about my body. I thought about calling Sophie again, but I didn't. I knew she was trying to stay neutral, and dragging her into my feelings wouldn't help. Instead, I called my mom. She's painting herself as the victim, I said quietly. She is a victim, Mom replied. Just not of you. She's a victim of her own pain. People like that project it onto anyone who makes them feel small, literally or emotionally. Yeah, well, it worked. I feel small. Mom sighed. Sweetheart, sometimes people can't stand seeing someone comfortable in their own skin, especially when they aren't. Her words lingered long after we hung up that night. I sat by my window, watching the city lights flicker against the dark. I wondered how many people out there were living the same double standard, being told to love themselves, but only in a way that didn't offend anyone else. I didn't regret what I'd said. Not really. But I regretted how alone it made me feel afterward. Somewhere deep down, though, I knew this wasn't the end of the story, because the more people tried to make me feel guilty for loving myself, the more I started to question why that was such a crime in the first place. A week later, I ran into Amanda. It wasn't planned. I was at the grocery store wearing an oversized hoodie and earbuds, hoping to grab coffee and disappear back into my apartment before running into anyone from that side of town. But as I turned into the produce aisle, there she was. Amanda, standing in front of a pyramid of avocados, scrolling through her phone. For a moment, I froze. My first instinct was to turn around and pretend I hadn't seen her. But before I could, she looked up. Our eyes met. Her expression flickered between surprise and discomfort. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then, almost reluctantly, she sighed and said, Hey. Hey, I echoed, my voice tight. The silence between us stretched, awkward and fragile. Finally, she cleared her throat. How's your face? I touched my cheek unconsciously. It's fine. Good. She shifted her weight. Listen, I probably shouldn't have, hit you. Probably, I said quietly. She winced. Okay. Yeah, that was awful. I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. The apology hung in the air, genuine but incomplete. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't mean to make you cry, I finally said. Amanda let out a sharp breath, almost a laugh. Yeah, well, you did. Her tone wasn't cruel, but defensive, the voice of someone bracing for impact. I wasn't trying to insult you, I said. I just got tired of pretending I was okay with being insulted every year. Amanda looked down at the cart handle, her knuckles white around it. You think I don't know that? I know I make comments. It's just... She hesitated. You don't get what it's like to look at someone who's everything you wish you were and have them act like it's nothing. It feels like a slap in the face. Her choice of words made my stomach twist. So it's okay for you to slap me first? I asked softly. No, she said quickly. I don't know. It's hard to explain. When you said you love being skinny, it felt like you were rubbing it in, like you were proud of what I hate most about myself. Her voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time, I saw something raw beneath the bitterness. Fear. I didn't know what to say. My anger softened, but only slightly. Amanda, I've spent my whole life being told to eat more, to gain weight, to look healthy. People joke about how I could never fill out a dress or have curves. I've cried about it. I've starved myself to prove I wasn't starving. Do you think being skinny means never hating yourself? She blinked, startled. You? Hate your body? More times than I can count. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't stop. You think I've never looked in the mirror and wished I looked different? That people wouldn't treat me like I'm fragile or sick or less womanly because I don't have the right shape? Amanda's face softened. I never thought about it like that. Yeah, I said, my throat tight. Most people don't. We stood there in the middle of the aisle, surrounded by fruit and fluorescent lights, two women on opposite sides of the same pain. Amanda finally sighed. I'm sorry, really. I shouldn't have taken my crap out on you. You didn't deserve that. Thank you, I said quietly. And I'm sorry too. I didn't mean to sound smug. I was just trying to survive the moment. She nodded slowly. I get it. I guess we both have our stuff. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she gave a small, tired laugh. This is weird, huh? Crying next to the avocados. I couldn't help but smile. A little bit. She looked down at her cart. Anyway, I should go, but thanks for not yelling at me. I think we've both had enough yelling, I said. When she walked away, I felt lighter, not because everything was fixed, but because something inside me had finally loosened. As I pushed my cart toward checkout, I realized that for years I'd been measuring myself against people like Amanda, just as she'd been measuring herself against me. We were trapped in the same warped game, one that no one really wins. We were both taught to see our bodies as currency, our worth as a reflection in someone else's mirror, and maybe, for the first time, we'd both stopped playing. The next morning, I woke up feeling strange. Not happy exactly, but lighter, like the weight that had been pressing down on me for weeks had shifted just enough to let in a little air. My conversation with Amanda replayed in my head, but this time it didn't sting. Instead, I kept hearing one phrase over and over. You don't get what it's like to look at someone who's everything you wish you were. That sentence had lodged itself somewhere deep, because truthfully, I'd done the same thing, compared myself to women who looked the way I thought I should. It had never occurred to me that maybe Amanda and I had been living parallel lives, trapped in opposite versions of the same insecurity. After breakfast, I texted Sophie. Hey, can we talk? She replied almost immediately. Of course. Coffee? We met at the same cafe we'd been going to since high school, the kind with chipped mugs and plants that always looked half alive. She was already there when I arrived, stirring her drink and biting her lip like she wasn't sure where to start. I slid into the chair across from her. Hey. Hey, she echoed, smiling a little. You look better. I feel better, I admitted. I saw Amanda yesterday. Her eyebrows shot up. Seriously? Yeah, total coincidence. But we talked. It wasn't awful. Sophie leaned forward, curious. What happened? She apologized for slapping me, for the comments, for all of it. And I apologized, too. Not because I think I was wrong, but because I realized she wasn't trying to be cruel. She was just hurting. Sophie exhaled slowly, nodding. That sounds like her. We sat quietly for a moment, both sipping our drinks. I owe you an apology, too, she said finally. I shouldn't have made it sound like what you said was worse than what she did. I was just trying to keep the peace, and I didn't want to believe that my friends could be so mean to each other. I smiled faintly. I get it. You were stuck in the middle. She gave a sheepish nod. Still, it wasn't fair to you. You didn't deserve to be treated like that. Something inside me softened. Hearing those words, finally, made my throat tighten. Thanks, I said quietly. We talked for another hour, not just about the party, but about everything else we'd missed. Her new job, my apartment, the stupid TV shows we used to obsess over. It felt easy again, like slipping back into something familiar. Before we left, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm really glad you came, she said. Me too. Walking home afterward, I thought about how much had changed in just a week. The situation hadn't been pretty, but it had forced something open, a space for honesty, even if it had come through pain. That night, I stood in front of my mirror. For the first time in a long while, I didn't see flaws. I didn't see someone too thin or too weak or too anything. I just saw me. I thought about all the years I'd spent apologizing for my body, shrinking into oversized clothes, avoiding photos, laughing off comments that made me want to cry. And then I thought about Amanda, doing the same thing in reverse. Different bodies, same cage. Society had taught both of us that there was only one right way to look, and that everyone else had to either envy or despise it. I was done playing that game. So I took a deep breath and said it out loud, just to myself. I love my body. The words felt simple but not smug, not like the defensive armor they'd been at the party. They felt calm. True. I didn't mean I love being skinny in the way that had caused so much chaos. I meant I loved being me. The shape, the imperfections, the constant work it took to feel comfortable inside my own skin. Later that week, Sophie texted me again. Amanda asked if we could all hang out sometime. Just lunch. No drama. I stared at the message for a while before replying, maybe. Not yet. But maybe soon. Because healing didn't happen overnight. Forgiveness didn't erase what happened. It just stopped it from owning you. As I looked around my quiet apartment, the faint city light spilling through the blinds, I realized I was finally at peace with something I hadn't even noticed I was fighting. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing myself for judgment. I wasn't apologizing for existing, and it felt like freedom. A month later, Sophie sent another invitation. Not for her birthday this time, just a casual brunch at a little place downtown. She said Amanda would be there, along with a few others from the old group. For a few minutes, I just stared at the message. Part of me hesitated. That old instinct to protect myself, to avoid another scene. But another part of me, the one that had started to feel stronger lately, whispered that maybe this was a chance to finally close the loop. So I went. It was a warm Sunday morning, the kind where sunlight glitters off car roofs and the air smells faintly like coffee and fresh bread. I wore jeans and a soft cream sweater. Nothing fancy, just comfortable. When I arrived, Sophie waved from a table by the window. Amanda was sitting beside her. My stomach tensed, but I smiled anyway. Amanda looked up, and for the first time since everything happened, there was no tension in her face, just a quiet, tentative warmth. "Hey," she said. "Hey." We didn't hug, but we didn't need to. The air between us wasn't sharp anymore. The conversation stayed light. Brunch food, new movies, old jokes. Every now and then, I caught Amanda glancing at me, as if she were still trying to measure where we stood. Eventually, she leaned over slightly and said, "You look good. Healthier, somehow." I smiled. "Thanks. So do you." She laughed softly, maybe a little surprised by how easily it came out. The rest of brunch passed without any drama. No tension, no undercurrent, just people being people again. It was nice. When we finally said our goodbyes, Amanda pulled me aside near the door. "I'm really glad you came," she said. "I've been trying to be better, about the things I say, and about how I see myself." I nodded. Me too. We stood there for a moment, two people who'd once managed to hurt each other without ever meaning to. And for the first time, it didn't feel heavy. It just felt human. After brunch, I walked through the park nearby. It was full of people, kids running, couples sharing food, dogs tugging on leashes, everyone different, everyone existing without apology. I sat on a bench and watched for a while, thinking about how easy it is to forget that our bodies are just homes, temporary, imperfect, evolving. And yet somehow we spend so much time judging them, comparing them, weaponizing them. For years, I'd let other people define how I should feel about myself. Every comment, every stare, every backhanded compliment had chipped away at something fragile inside me. I'd mistaken politeness for strength, silence for grace. But that one small sentence, "Thanks, I love being skinny," had forced everything into the open. It wasn't about the words. It was about claiming space in a world that kept telling me I didn't deserve it unless I looked different. I thought about Amanda again. Her insecurities weren't mine to fix, but I understood them now. We'd both grown up believing that someone else's confidence was a threat, that self-love was a zero-sum game. But it wasn't. The truth was simpler, quieter. Loving yourself doesn't mean you think you're better. It just means you finally stopped thinking you're less. That night, I called my mom. She apologized again, I told her. "We're okay now." "I'm glad," Mom said. "You handled that with a lot of grace, you know." "I don't know if I'd call it grace," I said with a small laugh. "More like exhaustion." She chuckled. "Sometimes exhaustion is what finally teaches us peace." After we hung up, I sat by my window, watching the city lights shimmer against the night sky. My reflection glowed faintly in the glass. Familiar, unremarkable, completely mine. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to change anything. Not my body, not my story, not the way I took up space in the world. Somewhere in the quiet between heartbeats, I realized that healing isn't about proving who was right or wrong. It's about deciding what you'll carry forward and what you'll finally set down. Amanda had her own weight to let go of. So did I. But as I sat there, breathing in the stillness of my apartment, I knew one thing for certain. I'd stopped apologizing for taking up space, and that, in its own small way, felt like victory. This story really hit me. I immediately felt for the narrator. The anxiety and dread she experiences every year at Sophie's birthday party were so relatable. Amanda's constant comments about her body were cruel, and I could feel how exhausting it must have been to deal with that repeatedly. I loved how the story showed both sides, the narrator's struggle and Amanda's insecurities, making the confrontation feel real and human. Most of all, I admired the narrator's journey toward self-acceptance, standing up for herself, and learning to embrace her body without shame. If this story resonated with you, please consider sharing it. It means a lot to me and helps support the channel so I can keep creating and sharing stories that matter.